That engagement of Taylor Swift's was one of the worst things that could have happened to women over 30. I've been following it on my personal Instagram, both with some women from Brazil. For those who don't know, I spent a season there, and also one or two from abroad, and the way they've perceived this Taylor Swift engagement has been extremely damaging to them. This is because it's a situation that creates an even bigger cope. Because the female cope exists, women have a ton of cope. It's not just men who have cope. They have some extremely strong ones, like this issue with age, where they can't understand the weight of their age, they can't understand the weight of their past actions. And Taylor is precisely a 35-year-old woman who has done everything in her past and still got the so-called big reward in the end. And now, every woman out there thinks she's going to be the next Taylor Swift, but she can't understand how different she is from that woman. And obviously, you already know the channel's style. I'm going to connect this with several other topics to make it more interesting too. And before I get into the video's topic, I have an important message. I've created a members area. The link is in the video description, and for just $22 a month, you'll have access to more in-depth content. I can't put it here on the channel because it would be easily taken down. So if you want to deepen your male development, just go there, because every week there's new material for you to develop in all areas of your life. Anyway, back to the topic. What's the deal with Taylor Swift? Dude, have you ever seen when, for example, some kid from the countryside or a kid from a favela is discovered and makes a lot of money? Now every kid in that community thinks he's also going to become a soccer player. And most of them end up what? Deluding themselves. Because being a soccer player is something you can train for every day, improving, climbing step by step. But being a soccer superstar, man, that's kind of about talent. It's also like what a producer used to say. When some guy becomes a multimillionaire in the digital sector, I'm not talking about a guy who makes 10, 20, 30, 40K. I'm talking about a guy who reaches the level of a Thiago Finch. There's also a certain something, a talent there, like a Neymar, but for business. Not everyone is going to reach that level. And a lot of people end up thinking they're going to be the next one. The Taylor Swift case is the same thing. She's a 35-year-old woman. She's ridden the carousel a ton. She's done everything. She's messed around. And now she's still managed to get a fiancé, a future husband, that other women are seeing great value in. So, what feeling does this give? That you can do anything you want in your life, that you can already be 35 years old, an age where back in the day, some women were already grandmothers. My grandmother herself was a grandmother at 35. And now a lot of women think they're going to be the next Taylor Swift. But what's the deal? They don't see that in the same way that in digital marketing you have one Thiago Finch and most people are normal. In soccer you have one Neymar per generation and most are average players. Taylor Swift is a really beautiful woman, 5 feet 10, good body, symmetrical face, blonde, light eyes, a billionaire, and super famous. She managed to do everything wrong and still correct it in the end. The same way Neymar, if he decides to train for real, can have a hell of a season even if he hasn't trained completely. He's managed to train so well in recent years. The same way George Foreman came back from boxing retirement overweight and still managed to become a world champion at 40, these are people who are outliers. The average guy, 1 year that he doesn't train, his career is over, he never recovers. The average woman, once she reaches a certain age, once she's had her mileage in her little town, forget any chance of getting a handsome, tall, courageous, rich guy, the chance has passed. But a lot of people can't understand that they don't have what Neymar has, what Thiago Finch has, and a lot of women also can't understand that they aren't Taylor Swift. She's not 5 feet 10, she's 5 feet 4 inches. Taylor Swift has a body like that. Some chicks have tangerine bodies. She has beautiful long hair, some chicks have weird hair. Taylor is a billionaire, the chick following her on Instagram is some kind of HR assistant at a company. They can't understand that they won't be the next Taylor Swift, that the average person doesn't have so many opportunities. The average person has to make choices, lose one thing to gain another. They're not going to have the best of both worlds. Maybe the most beautiful woman in the city, that girl who was even a little model, maybe she can, at 30, snag a guy who is a good catch, but we're talking about the most beautiful woman in the city, who is extremely unique, and even then, at 23, she would have snagged a better husband than at 33. And that's the case with Taylor. The chick who is watching, thinking she's going to be the next Taylor, she doesn't have Taylor's looks, she looks 5 years older than her because she doesn't take the same aesthetic care, doesn't have the same genetic predisposition, or the same exposure and contacts with high-level people. It's the kind of little story that makes a lot of people enter a world of fantasy, a world of make-believe, and start to think they have the same possibilities as her. No, they don't. You don't have her characteristics. And this has kind of put it into the heads of women all over the world that it's going to turn out well. So, many were already starting to face reality, thinking, yeah, I'm going to have to lower my standards. Then one goes and succeeds. Boom. Now all of them think they're going to succeed too. They all think they're also going to find an outstanding guy at 35 years old, with that whole checklist they have. We already know what will be left. It's the chubby working guy, it's the skinny guy from the office, the guy with the bicycle, it's not the badass guy. It's not going to happen. It wasn't even happening when they were young. So I think, this kind of false hope, it just gets in the way. For the average person, sometimes it's better to get your feet on the ground and understand that, man, I'm not going to be a business genius, I'm not going to be a Neymar, so let me do something solid, simple, and let's go. So there are a lot of guys who sometimes try to do complex things in their careers. They understand that, no, you know what I do is this. I'm just going to use a little bit of what the digital guys are teaching to get more clients, but my thing is this. I'm a service provider. I'm not going to open an e-commerce, I'm not going to open a channel. I'm just going to get some traffic stuff to bring more clients to my company, but I'll keep working on my core business, which is what I know how to do. And the guy does well. Because the guy understands which league he's playing in. It's like, for example, in fighting. Sometimes a guy is a great fighter at 155 pounds. Then the guy says, I'm tired of cutting weight, I'm going to move up to 170. It's not the same thing, because the guys are bigger, heavier, and so the guy sometimes can't perform as well in the higher category. But the guy who recognizes where his category is, he can have greater success. So when you recognize what your game is in the financial world, you understand that you're playing in a fight, because, well, not everyone is going to do dropshipping, e-commerce, something like that. Sometimes you understand that it's not for you, but you understand that you're a good service provider, and then you can qualify yourself, increase what you charge per hour, increase your client acquisition, and that's your game. While for other people, sometimes the guy's game is creating content, or another one is in artificial intelligence, another one is becoming a programmer. It's the same thing in relationships. There's a guy who understands that there's a type of woman there that, dude, works well with him. There's a guy who recognizes that, well, my thing isn't chasing, my thing is something calmer. Then the guy will be happy that way. There's also a guy who's the opposite, who recognizes that he doesn't like dating, that he's not very sentimental, that he doesn't like the social dynamics of a relationship. He understands that his path is to stay single or have casual encounters, or just chill out. But this requires a little bit of self-knowledge, for you to see who you really are, what aptitudes you have. There are guys who would love to hook up with everyone, but they look in the mirror and they see that they don't have a predisposition for it. Sometimes the guy has a very poor appearance or is past the time and weight, and then the guy sees that it's really not his game. Sometimes he goes and opens his wallet to pay for services under the table, which will more or less do the same thing it would for someone else. As for the women, I believe they cope a little harder than men. For a man, it's easier to look in the mirror and say, well, I'm ugly. When a man looks at a woman on the street and the woman doesn't look back, you don't think, make an effort to like a man. Generally, you accept the situation much better. We men accept it better. We look and say, yeah, this girl must be used to a better level than mine. Maybe, I don't know, she didn't like my hair, my color, my physique, my height, my ethnicity, my whatever. Maybe she's dating or married, maybe she doesn't like men, that can also happen. But we don't start shame attacking a woman when she ignores us on the street. But just try ignoring a woman's gaze on the street. You'll be called everything. And that same girl who's sometimes all about political correctness will call you a member of the Rainbow Brigade, and all sorts of things. Political correctness only goes so far. A man, he's much more, he copes much more with other issues. Because for a man, it has always been very important in evolution to be strong and powerful, influential. So a man generally thinks he is on a higher level of influence and power. Every man thinks he fights better than he actually does. There are 3 phrases that I think you say almost every day that could become a digital product. Do you have a digital product idea yet? I've been fighting since I was a kid, by the way. And when a novice comes into the gym, it's a horror show. And sometimes even a guy who's in shape comes in, but he's never trained. You see the skinny little white belt, even a teenager, beating the crap out of the guy. Everyone thinks they know how to fight. Then when they get to the gym, they find out they don't. Guys have this habit of coping on that side. The woman has the cope for beauty. So she can't understand. She knows that Taylor Swift is better than her. But she thinks Taylor is just 1 point above. That Taylor is a 9 and she's an 8. When you actually see it, she's a 4. She can't understand the levels of distance. It's like sometimes a man watching a UFC event, and there's a weaker fight, and he thinks, I'd beat the crap out of that guy. It seems like the guy is fighting badly because he's fighting one of the top 10 in the world. You would be annihilated in 10 seconds. But I have this awareness because I train. So I know my difference to a professional fighter. I know that the professional fighter is on a much higher level. Do you know how long a fight between me and a guy from the UFC would last? If he wants it to be 10 seconds, it'll be 10 seconds. If he wants to play around and say it's going to be 30, if he wants, just for fun, to make the fight last 5 minutes, it'll last 5 minutes. But the moment he decides to finish it, it's over. I understand this difference in levels. But most people don't. And women with beauty are the same way. Rarely will a girl recognize that she's a 6. When a woman says she's a 6, it's because she's a 3, a 4. Because beauty has always been important for them. That's how they got their marriages, their place in society, how they were provided for and protected. And they can't understand the miles of distance between their score and Taylor Swift's score. Whoever is at the top is like that. They get everything, they get the best of both worlds. The average person, and what I'm seeing is what? A flood of women who are completely out of touch, all of them falling in score. 2 years ago she was a 6, now she's a 5.5, or she was a 5, now she's a 4.5, because time works against you. And now, because of one person's success, they think this will apply to them. It's a huge cope, just one more that has become very evident for us to be able to analyze the scenario, see what's happening in the media, and connect it with what we talk about here on the channel. Did you like the video? Subscribe, it's free to subscribe to the channel. Like and share with that friend who needs a reality check. Onward warriors. See you in the next video.